is one of the organizations that awards those certificates to companies. So it is a good opportunity for that. But as far as the process goes, very similar, as I said, for all of these organizations. First, once you've sort of identified who you want to align with, you want to make sure that they're going to be able to offer you what you want. So you pick that organization, and sometimes, one thing that I did notice, because we did find a couple that were in Sweden, I think on the last slide there was one for Nordic Swan. It was kind of funny when I was going through and trying to find all of the different steps to identifying how to get these certifications. Nordic Swan was like right there. It told you exactly what we wanted, and we talked a little bit in the last class about how very straight to business. And sometimes in the other websites it was a little bit more difficult to identify, what the costs were and what the application process was. So just sort of funny. But first, many of these organizations do require an application fee, and it can range from around $900 all the way up to $6,500. So it can be pretty expensive. Then there's a testing process, an approval process for either the product or the business practices. So it can either be that physical product, or it can be the company's processes by which they create the product. It can even be down to a corporate office and how efficient they are. If they do a lot of recycling, or if they use sustainable materials in the office. There are even organizations that will certify a company under those standards. So through that testing process, it can even be through a third party, but many of the organizations actually send individuals from their company, because it's also kind of like a consulting project. They come in and they can show you how to be greener, but they also come in and they can certify and say that you're doing things the right way. And then once you're approved, you can then begin using that label. And there are very strict guidelines for using the label. Of course, you have to follow the rules, or you can be penalized by the organization. They can take it away from you. They can impose time limits on when you can get it back, that kind of thing. And then, of course, there are renewal fees that go along with it. The Energy Star rating, the Department of Energy and EPA are the ones that sort of regulate that. But when they award an Energy Star rating, companies are actually required to track the sales of their products, so that the DOE and the EPA can monitor how well Energy Star products are moving throughout the economy. But other companies do require those renewal fees based on either the size of the project or based on revenues for product sales. So it can be upwards of $30,000 to maintain and renew that certification. So it can be pretty cumbersome. But Rachel's going to talk a little bit more about the benefits and some of the drawbacks of certification. So I'll let her go through that.
Thank you. So as companies are thinking about any sort of new component of their product or new aspect of their marketing mix, it's always really important that they think about the costs and benefits of that new aspect. So there are a lot of them, but we just wanted to highlight a couple of the benefits of certifying your product as green, and then the costs. One of the major benefits is obviously increased market awareness. Energy Star is a great example of this. When you see a product with an Energy Star logo on it, you kind of know the reputation that you're getting with that. Increased credibility for sound processes. When you certify with a when you certify your product as green, a lot of times you're regulated to follow certain environmental standards, and that can obviously have a big impact on the quality of your product. And finally, a potential increase in the value or allowance for premium pricing. So for example, if you're going to shop for an air conditioner, if you're looking at just a regular old air conditioner and then one that's, let's say, Energy Star approved, a lot of consumers are going to be more willing to pay that extra price for that Energy Star air conditioner. Another good example of that is hybrid cars. If you look at the average price of a Toyota Prius, I think is around $22,000, and a Ford Focus is around $15,000. So when you look at that price differential, a lot of times consumers are going to pay that extra $7,000 to go with a hybrid certified car. But of course, there are also costs to certifying your product as green. As Tasha said earlier, certifying your product can cost upwards of $30,000 in terms of renewal fees. A lot of times they price these as a percentage of your product's revenue. So that's important to keep in mind when you're thinking about whether to certify your product. Maintenance and testing. Working with these third-party organizations can be cumbersome in terms of their procedures that you have to follow to continue to keep your product green certified. Greenwashing is a term that we came across a lot in our research, and what greenwashing means, it's a relatively new term, is when the market can become saturated with green certified products and then it eventually can dilute the actual meaning of being green certified. So that's something that's really important for companies to keep in mind today and going forward. Too many options. There are a lot of organizations out there that will certify your products, and it's often hard for companies to decipher which ones are credible and which ones aren't. A lot of companies will have a lengthy series of steps. Others will just, it's kind of pay $5,000 and your product will be green. So it's important to really watch out for those when companies are looking for this. And that leads to our final drawback of certification, reliance on a third party to maintain part of your brand. So if you go with one of those organizations that isn't as reputable, you're going to carry that with your product's brand image. So it's really critical to keep in mind who you are asking to certify your product, because that can have, obviously, pretty detrimental impact on your product's image. And now Aaron is going to talk about LEED certification.
So what does this all mean?